So there's a lot to watch this week. We'll begin in Mississippi. Our Ed O'Keefe is in Tupelo, where President Trump will campaign for Hyde-Smith in just a few minutes. So, Ed, the president is being deployed last minute to a state he won by nearly 18 percentage points. How much is this election about Hyde-Smith, and how much is it about him?
Hyde-Smith would like to make it all about Donald Trump, Elaine. She has spent the last 2 weeks really quite relentlessly focused on the fact that the president supports her, that she supports the president, and that she would be a yes vote for whatever he wants in Washington. Democrats would like to make it about the incumbent, Senator Hyde-Smith, who has been facing, of course, questions about some things she has said in the past, the recent past, and some questions about some of her own deeds, if you will, over the last few years. What exactly transpires tomorrow, though, remains to be seen. Both sides concede this is probably a single-digit race, but if history is any guide, a presidential visit on the eve of an election has a way of helping in red states like this one, and Republicans are pretty confident they'll pull it off tomorrow by at least maybe 5 or 6 points.
Well, Senator Hyde-Smith is facing criticism for her comments referencing a, quote, public hanging. Let's listen now to how she responded to that at a debate last week.
For anyone that was offended by my comments, I certainly apologize. There was no ill will, no intent whatsoever in my statements. I also recognize that this comment was twisted and it was turned into a weapon to be used against me, a political weapon used for nothing but personal and political gain by my opponent. That's the type of politics Mississippians are sick and tired of.
Ed, is there any way to gauge right now whether that response was enough for voters?
Hard to tell because there's been no public polling in this race since the second round began. And yet she said that last week at the debate, and she has otherwise tried to stay out of the spotlight, avoiding reporters yesterday at a series of stops. Today made no public appearances until she appears on this stage a little later, and then down along the Gulf Coast with the president. Her campaign seems to be intent on trying to do no harm at this point. She said what she said in that debate. If I offended you, so be it. And hoping that essentially a barrage of ads on television that remind people that she's a supporter of the president and that her Democratic opponent, Mike Espy, would not be, might be enough to pull this off.
Well, let me ask you, you asked Mike Espy Monday if there are places where he agrees with the president. Let's listen to his response.
I've always said that I respect the office of the president. Whoever's in it, I respect the office. So whatever, if it's President Trump, if it's President whomever. So Mississippi First means I value Mississippi over everything else, over party, over persons, over everybody. I'm an independent person, and I'll be an independent senator.
So, Ed, what is your take on his response there?
That's exactly what a Democrat has to do in a state like this, where the president won by 18 and where every statewide elected position is held by Republicans. It's a state that has seen a transformation, much like other now deep red states across the country. And so they understand that if you're going to win an election as a Democrat, you have to cast yourself as an independent actor. Very similar to what Joe Manchin does in West Virginia, very similar to what John Tester did in Montana, and what Joe Donnelly and Claire McCaskill perhaps unsuccessfully did this month in Indiana and Missouri. Remember, Espy was a member of Congress, the first black member of Congress for Mississippi since Reconstruction, elected in the late 80s, served into the 90s when he served as President Clinton's agriculture secretary. So he has a history of appearing on the ballot here and has maintained a relationship with both sides of the aisle, both politically and in the business community. So he's seen as somebody who could conceivably pick off enough support from either Republicans who are concerned about Hyde-Smith as well as independents who are willing to vote for him because they know him, they know his family name in this state, and believe that he perhaps would be a better choice. But it's a tall hill to climb for him. No Democrat has been elected from Mississippi to the U.S. Senate since John Stennis back in 1982.
Oh, well, Ed, there has been a lot of attention during the midterms about voting rights, and I wonder what role is that issue playing in this runoff election?
Well, it became a sort of last-minute issue, Elaine, because of one of these viral video clips featuring the senator. She was caught earlier this month at an event at Mississippi State where she was talking with supporters about the possibility of expanding voting locations to college campuses. And she said something to the effect of, well, I'm okay with that, but I realize that some of my critics at those other campuses might not like me, and therefore maybe we shouldn't make it as easy for them to vote. In a state like Mississippi, where voter suppression, where other troubled racial elements have sort of colored this state's history, that was seen by Democrats, by civil rights groups in and outside the state as a troubling statement, and one that they've highlighted, in addition to her comments about the possibility of sitting in the front row of a public lynching if one of her supporters asked her to do so. So those two moments, caught on video by a liberal blogger, really have been what Democrats have relied on in the closing days of this contest, hoping that it infuriates enough folks to show up to vote against her and to vote for Espy.
All right, Ed O'Keefe reporting from Tupelo, Mississippi, the birthplace of Elvis. Ed, thank you.